Hey folks, it's Matt once again, and welcome back to another video. And this is one of a couple videos for Corey, who sent me quite a few DVDs, including these two. Heroes of Horror and Lugosi, Hollywood's Dracula. And it's a bit hard to review documentaries, because that's what they are. But I'll do my best, and let's talk about Lugosi, Hollywood's Dracula first. As it says here, the story of the life and career of Bela Lugosi, the legendary actor who have forever changed the face of horror. Now, granted, I don't think it's as fantastic as the American Cinematographer magazine says, but I'm a sucker for these documentaries. I'm a sucker for them. When you go on YouTube, you can find quite a few documentaries. For example, this one called Universal Horror, by a lot of the early 30s and 40s Universal horror films. There's one on Hammer horror movies, and although I didn't grow up with Hammer horror movies, and there's a couple I enjoyed, and I even reviewed. For example, the first Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, House of Dracula, I believe it's called. I enjoyed that when I reviewed it. I thought that was a good one. But even if I'm not the most knowledgeable, that's still an interesting documentary to watch. I haven't seen it forever. I'm not sure if it's on DVD or anything, or if it was just something done for a special. Even little stuff, like there was this one called Monster Mania, narrated by Jack Palance, where it just talked about monster movies throughout the decades. If that's on DVD, it's one of those DVDs that's very expensive. I remember I had the VHS of it. And of course later on you had, not really a documentary, but you had Terror in the Isles, and you had other stuff of that nature. But this one, as you can tell, it's about Bela Lugosi himself, who is Dracula. And I know Corey mentioned maybe I should do this and the Bela Lugosi portion of this in the same video, but nah, I don't want to separate it. I would say they're both worth it. I mean, if I had to pick, I would say this one because you get 5 documentaries instead of just on Bela Lugosi. But the difference between the two, the Bela Lugosi on this one, as well as the others, I think they were part of A&E biographies. I believe that was the case. They're around 45 minutes a piece. And what you hear about Bela Lugosi in this is a good counterbalance to this, because they kind of sum the same things, but it's done very different ways, and you have different people being interviewed. And if you're a diehard fan, I would suggest getting both. But I would say between the two, this one's definitely the more flashier one. Definitely, I would say the more bit finely put together, where it's a lot more rare footage and interviews with folks, and more rare photographs, more footage about his little-known silent film career. And before I get into that, it's a 2-disc set. This disc is an audio disc, which has a few of his radio plays that he did. Baker's Broadcast with Ozzie and Harriet, Mystery House, The Thirsty Death, Texaco Star Theater with Fred Allen, a radio interview, and then Command Performance. I think that's the one where it was a radio show with Bela Lugosi as the villain, of course, and Bob Hope as Superman. Yes, Bob Hope as Superman. Again, it's nothing you see, it's like a CD. You just listen to the audio. And then this disc is the documentary. Now, one gripe I have is down here, it says 120 minutes. You probably can't see it. But it says approximately 120 minutes. So I assume the documentary would be 2 hours, but instead, the documentary is only 53 minutes. The reason it says 2 hours is because they included the extra features as part of that time, which I don't know many DVDs that do that. usually DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever, when they say the time, not every case, but a lot of cases, it's about the main production itself. But, so that was a bit disappointing, because I had just seen a 45-minute documentary, and I'm like, okay, I want to hear more about Bela Lugosi and some of the unknown films he had been a part of, a little bit of the making of them, but instead it's 53 minutes. But either way, it's still good. I mean, his upbringing, mastering the craft on stage in Hungary, then in Germany, then going to the US. He even played Jesus in a play, if you believe that. About how he, at one time, you know, it was tough back then, he would fight duels, like sword duels, and about 11 of them. Unlike the one on this one shows a bit of his silent film career, little bits and pieces. And both talked about he did Dracula on Broadway, and Lon Chaney Sr. was going to do Dracula, but then Lon Chaney Jr., he was a big success story of films. He had done The Phantom of the Opera, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and they wanted him for Dracula. He passed away. Even though Lugosi was having success on the stage as Dracula, they didn't want him, but he kind of fought for the role and he got it. Became a very big success. Then he was offered Frankenstein, but he said no because he didn't want to be in the makeup, and mainly because there was no dialogue. He felt, well, I'm an actor, this is beneath me. There's no dialogue, it's just me grunting. But unfortunately, that was the biggest mistake of his life, because Boris Karloff got it. Then he became successful, and in fact, even more successful than Bela Lugosi. And that's why after that, he would take as many roles as he can, because he was afraid that if he passed it off, it might be a repeat of him passing on Frankenstein. Definitely very flashy editing. I don't know how to describe it. It's just one of those things that if you're into documentaries and you're into this era, and if you're curious about Bela Lugosi, I definitely think it's worth a look. Because not only do you get the 53-minute documentary, which I do think is pretty well put together, live interviews from folks who worked with him, who were his fans. You do get 30 minutes of deleted footage, which is them showing clips of quite a few of his films that are lesser known during certain time periods of his career. A 1932 Lugosi interview, which is also on the special features on here, but on this one, it's him being interviewed by this woman, and he kind of scares her, has fun with her. The one on here is in much better condition. A 1949 Lugosi TV show excerpt. I think it was Milton Berle. I could be wrong. I think that was one that Milton Berle did something ad-libbing, and Lugosi got confused, and so then it's nothing over the top or extravagant, but he left, and then Milton Berle talks, well, you know how to ruin a good joke too. But there's like no fight or anything, it's just a little excerpt. And then a segment from one of his silent films in 1918. Some extended interviews, one from a fan of his. One is the original trailer to Dracula, and the guy who I think was the son of Renfield, the actor who played Renfield, or son or grandson, tells a little bit about his dad. A guy who's a fan talked about a time when they went to dinner, and Bela Lugosi kind of in a, I'm trying to find the right word, in a smart way, casual, clever way, got them all to dinner, and then talked with the guy who ran the restaurant and made it so that he got the whole dinner for free. And then like this little interview with Hope Lugosi, which was his last wife who found him dead. She was a bitch. She was just a total bitch. She was unsentimental. It looked like she was ready to attack the film crew interviewing her and snap at them. And she just casually talking about, oh yeah, I found his body, and it's like, yeah, you can tell that she has no love for Lugosi. She's just a bitch. And I'm like, Jesus, man, come on. So she was I think she's passed away. Because some of this was filmed back in the day, and I think this came out around maybe 2013, give or take. But I'm sorry, she came off like an absolute bitch. But as for going back, so you did quite a few stuff in there. But yeah, going back to the documentary, it talks about how the little films he did with Boris Karloff, they were both on screen. It talks about how he got typecast, how when the war was going on, studios kind of stopped horror films altogether because it seemed to pale in comparison to the real-life wars of the World War. And then they made a little bit of comeback, doing Son of Frankenstein, how Bela Lugosi liked playing Igor in that movie, how he would go back to doing Dracula on stage, but people were not scared by Dracula anymore. A couple of films he had done, The Body Snatcher with Boris Karloff, Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein. They even mention Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla, and even have a little bit with the guy who's the Jerry Lewis wannabe. For those who don't know, in that film, there was a Jerry Lewis and Dee Martin copycat who starred in that film. And the guy who's the Jerry Lewis copycat, he's in there, and he has some very nice, tearful, nice things to say about Bela. And then they mention about Ed Wood and how he passed away. And the reason they're going in depth is because that's really what the documentary is doing. I just wish that it was longer, because I think both are good comparisons. Like, they're good complements of each other. Like even the Bela Lugosi one, I had to take a few notes because keep track of 5 documentaries on this. If you're wondering, they're shooting fireworks outside. If you're wondering what's going on there. But yeah, this one had more of interviews with Bela Lugosi's son, Martin Landau, Forrest J. Ackerman, who ran Famous Monsters of Filmland, the magazine. Ray Walston, my favorite Martian himself, talking about him. I just wish there was like a longer 2-hour documentary where they got into even the smaller films or the lesser known films that he had done, even if it's just a summation of the plot and, you know, did it do well, did it not do well, sort of a time history, film by film, which I know you can't do that in 45 or 53 minutes, but that's why when I saw this was 2 hours, I'm like, oh, cool, they're going to get in depth on some of the films. And that's the thing is, for both, all these documentaries, because they're so short and less than an hour long, and these guys had such good filmographies, you don't really get a lot of in-depth info on film by film by film. There's a lot of films that, you know, get touched on and then they move on. So that's my only thing. Is I wish each one was honestly longer, just 2 hours, so you get more in-depth nuggets and a timeline of he did this film, here's some nuggets about that film, he did this. Maybe that's not what everyone would prefer, but that's what I would prefer. But either way, if you're a fan of Bela Lugosi, I do think this is worth it. It's a flashier editing than the one on here, and again, interviews. I'll just read the back of it. Maybe that would help. Lugosi and Dracula are inseparable images from the heyday of Hollywood. More than any other actor in film history, Lugosi is the master of the macabre, the king of the vampires, and the cult hero of horror movies. Yet he was also a man who fought in wars and revolutions, who married 5 times, and who mastered stagecraft and film arts in Hungary, Germany, and the US. He remained an enigma in Hollywood even as his career dwindled into the weird worlds of drug abuse and filmmaker Ed Wood. And Lugosi's fusion with the famed vampire became more permanent than ever when he was buried in his Dracula cape in 1956. Lugosi, Hollywood's Dracula, unravels the truth behind the legendary star by interweaving rare film footage from 1918 to 1956, home movies, and previously unseen photographs, with narration by Lugosi co-star Robert Clark and Lugosi fan Rue McClanahan. Numerous on-camera interviews span family members, director Robert Wise, legendary producer Howard Day Koch, and a host of Lugosi's film co-stars and personal friends. Now, I would definitely say you get more of his personal friends on this one than the other one. And apparently this won a lot of awards and accolades, good reviews. And I do think it's a good documentary for anyone who's a fan of the guy. Obviously, if you're not a fan, you would never get this anyway, but I'm glad I have this. I was glad to watch it. I do think it's worth it for anyone who's into this stuff. And I know it's not much, but it's hard to review these kind of things. But anyway, I liked it. I just wish it was longer and more in depth, specifically on some of his films. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I like the added bits on the features. I wish the documentary itself was 2 hours, but still. And I will say the audio stuff, it was kind of interesting, but at the same time, I will never listen to the audio stuff again. I mean, it's nice to be there for historic sake. At the same time, though, I would never listen to them again. I mean, it was kind of interesting to have Bob Hope as Superman and Bela Lugosi as the villain and one of them, but again, never listen to it again. But anyway, thanks for watching, take care, and next time I'll talk about Heroes of Horror. See you in a bit.